Salut și bine ați venit la podcastul Teamology Institute, susținut de OTP Bank. Scopul nostru principal e diseminarea conceptelor validate științific și a bunelor practici din domeniul construirii și conducerii echipelor performante. Credem că e mare nevoie în România de profesionalizarea subiectului și sperăm să putem ajuta cu aceste conversații, izvorâte atât din experiența noastră directă de lucru în echipă, cât și din cea de lucru cu echipele clienților noștri. Hello everybody, good to be here again, this time with a very special guest, Mr. Gyula Fater, the CEO of OTP Bank. Thank you very much for being with me today here.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm very, very happy to have you here and learn how you look from a CEO of a bank perspective to the subject of team and team performance. As I imagine it is crucial for such a complex organization as a bank is to get results and to achieve the performance it wants. You are here for the last four years.
Yes.
Now, I will start with this question. If you would look back 4 years this month, let's say, what advice would you give yourself for the next 4 years?
For the next 4 years,
Yes,
restarting.
Yes.
Actually, I would say that don't believe that 4 years are long, because it was just really just like a moment. Just flew away. Really, I still consider myself as new to the market, to the country, but I have to realize that really 4 years just gone, and that was really full of these 4 years were full of actions, full of interactions, and really, I mean, that was probably the 4 years of the most interesting and changing and challenging 4 years of our latest history.
Indeed. If you think of a high and a low of these 4 years, maybe linked with working in a team or with your teams, what would you say would be the highest point, a very good thing that happened in this area? And what would you say was the lowest point, the most difficult that you faced?
Let's start with the highest, which is hopefully it's still ahead. So let's say the temporary high, the local maximum, as you say in the stock exchange. That definitely we have a program which is started 4 years ago when I was coming, and aiming to have a new bank, a different bank, culturally improved. With bigger size, and actually we are on track with these developments, and we have a good team, we have a very different culture, and it's really good to feel that something happened and we did it together and we achieved this. Though we know that this is a journey, and there is no such an end point that this is we achieved, and then we have a good team, it's a successful team, and then finito. So we of course we're not saying this, but still it's really, and it's also not so easy to understand that you got it and you have it, because you just see the days when even if you are improving, but you are facing the daily problems, and it's sometimes we even forgetting about this very very positive and high moments. So I think that was the most positive thing I have in my mind. Probably the toughest was actually when I was coming. So it's not easy to face 80 people in a room who were really staring at you. And everyone was asking that, who is this guy? what he really wants, and what's in it for me, or what's coming next. And that's just starting from the scratch. It's not easy. So probably that was a very, very difficult moment, probably mentally. Mm-hmm. But it's, on the other side, it was a really challenging moment. And looking back, it was, ultimately, it was developing quite well.
Yeah. How long would you say it lasted till you had the feeling that you overcome that difficulty of the beginning?
I don't know really. So I could just invent something now.
No.
But it's really sometimes still I'm feeling that there are new things that I still surprised that this is happening. Okay. And I would say that it's always, and frankly, in any businesses, especially probably in banking, every day it can be a new challenge.
True. Talking about challenges, and you mentioned the size of the team and the complexity. How big is the workforce of the bank right now?
The overall team is now 1,700 colleagues.
Okay.
And we grew constantly. So we started with 1,200, and then gradually we grew up with the business to that size.
In the same time you grew and you transformed the bank.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. How do you perceive this stretch or these challenges when you think of your leadership team of the bank? How was this transformation and growth impacted this team, your team basically?
The team slightly changed during this journey, but that was really good that the key person still there. So at the very beginning we had a strong team though. What I was trying to do to leverage on the existing strengths we had that time, and just if we had some weaknesses, then we try to find new colleagues into the team, which I would say we succeeded with this. But all in all, it's hard to say that a team is really ready and working properly. So even nowadays we have new challenges, and we have to maintain and preserve or even improve the strength of this team.
Mm-hmm. Talking now about the leader of a team role, what would you say, understanding this, that the world, especially today, is full of challenges that you did not expect or cannot foresee, what would you say is the most important contribution of the leader of a team to the success of the team?
Well, I'm talking about my position. It can really vary by businesses and also leadership style. So my point is really that everyone has a different leadership style. So I probably I'm not answering your question not very directly, but you can lead me, and yes. I'm trying to cooperative.
Okay.
But so coming back to my core idea is that first we have to find our own style. How can we lead people? Always I'm a bit confused when people say that this is the right style of leading people, and then you pick up some leaders or sometimes celebrities, and then saying that he is a good leader. He might be a good leader, but not necessarily in all the roles and all the positions. So I think for me it's the best to have an environment that I can do on my way, on my style, and this is what is ultimately important for us to find our style. And from this perspective, I don't think I ever been a micromanager, and I ever been someone who really wants to tell people what they should do. So my role is rather to balance them, to help them, to help them, and for us to find the right strategy and then develop it.
So the key component, you would say, is self-awareness for the leader, to know yourself, what is your style, and how you feel good doing that. I mean, leading people.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you like leading people?
I think so.
Yes. Okay. It's important in terms of self-awareness, because I sometimes meet with some of my clients, and when we ask this question in a leadership team, not everybody likes this job, let's say, a lot. And then it's difficult to do. If you don't like it, it's difficult to do. But in your case, especially, this self-awareness, I guess it plays a big role, because you're actually leader of a team of leaders. They themselves have to know themselves in order to lead their people. But you also lead a leadership team of a bank. And banking is a very, very highly regulated industry, lots of regulations and all kind of measures in which everything gets scrutinized. How do you foster in your team creativity, experimentation, taking risks in such a regulated environment?
You're right. It's not easy, because a risk for a bank is somehow different than for some other companies in other businesses, and we have to find somehow the balance. Though I believe that the banks are not anymore what they used to be many years ago. So I remember that the bank was ultimately an organization, and by the way, I think the whole world around us changed completely. And if you want to have a good bank, I strongly believe that you have to grow with this. What I mean, I remember back to when I was young. Actually, the leadership was more about the organization. So there were strict rules, and everyone knew what was his small role in the organization. And then the leader task was to put together the organization, and then really rule it. And then I think somewhere in the after 2000, that it started with the customer focus. So then we moved to the customer focus, customer-centered leadership, and then the leader role was really to lead the company and find the focus which is with the customer, and to ensure that the ultimate profit generation should be based on the more understanding, better understanding of the customers. And I think in the recent years, what we are experiencing, that it's we just moved a step up or down, it's always...
We moved a step. Okay.
Yeah, we moved a step. And actually now the most important asset of a company is not necessarily the customer, but the employee. So I think it's an important mindset change. So the leader has to deal with especially and mainly with the colleagues. So the focus is on the colleagues. So if the colleagues are happy, they're satisfied, and they are energized, and then if they are creative and they have the room to use this opportunity, then of course if they ultimately are on the top of that, they are also customer centered, then the result of the company will be better, and then it leads to a higher profit, which is at the end of the day the most important for long-term objective of any companies.
Thank you. Now talking about this let's say, next step which we are in right now, in paying more attention to employees and how they can get energized to satisfy the customers. How about the cultural aspect? Because you came here, it was a foreign culture for you. How do you see these people performing in teams in these cultures? What would be the advantages and the challenges you see from your perspective? Yeah.
I do not really see too much difference in culture.
Okay.
Of course, there are minor differences, but even if we just comparing our sayings, so the everyday sayings, so we sharing a lot of them. So it's I think in Central Eastern Europe, of course there are different behaviors and sometimes different reactions. But the culture is not that far away from each other. So what I see that people are really eager to do something. If you have good colleagues, then they really focusing on their job and they committed to that, and that's ultimately the most important thing. So I don't think the biggest problem is the culture, at least in this part of the globe. Maybe if you are moving to a different continent, or you go to the northern part of Europe, you face something different. But I used to work with other nations in my past, and I don't think that really the culture, I mean the culture of the country, what is really making the difference. I believe that the difference of the company, I mean the culture
of the company.
Yes. So the differences between the different company cultures are more. They have much more differentiators than are differentiating more than the country culture.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are school of thoughts in the world that separate this. Some people believe that the company culture prevails over the country culture. Some people believe the other way around. That's why I wanted to understand, how do you perceive it? Very practical, because you saw these cultures. Yeah.
I used to work for a really big company, a very big international company, having more than 100 presence in more than 100 countries. And I seen that it's possible to have a corporate culture in very, very different geographies. So, and the people, even if they live very, very far away from each other, they can find the common language if they meet. So for me, the corporate culture prevails.
Okay. Talking about this, if they meet. The last few years put a strain on this capability of us to meet, actually. How did you see teamwork affected by this introduction of remote work? Do you think it's a way forward? It's here to stay? Should we go back to meeting in person? How do you look at it?
It's again, it's a big question. Step up or step down? Depends on. I see that this is not a big problem, definitely. So itself, whether we are sitting next to each other or we are really remotely and having just a Zoom conversation, I don't think itself this is what it's really a big difference, if we do it right. Even if we are neighbors and working together, but if we're not talking to each other, we just in the morning we sitting down next to each other, but in reality we have a silo, and we're not leveraging this physical proximity.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't help. On the other side, if we have the habit that, despite of the fact that we are not working together, but having every day a Zoom meeting for Smaller team, of course, you cannot do it for the whole bank or for the whole company. But I've seen really very, very good examples in our teams that they started the day every day, even when it was not easy. I mean, we were even in lockdown, so we could not even open the door and leave. So that time, people came together. They started the day with the coffee. Exactly how did they eat before,
yes.
and then they try to have the same behavior and the same relationship as they had before, and that's a very, very good example. But also there are problems just generated by this distance, and I'm more in favor of the personal meetings. Though in our company we still maintain the rule that there is only one rule even nowadays, that you should come once a week to your office, and otherwise it's depending on your activity or your job what you do. Obviously, in a branch, we cannot offer it to our branch colleagues, but as much as we can, we offering to everyone to have a choice, whether you want to come or not. Still, I believe that a certain personal proximity or interaction is needed. And thank God we don't have COVID anymore, so now it's really possible.
True. I should make a disclaimer now that we are working together. I'm working with your team. We started a leadership team development process, and I'm curious how you look at it. We did it in person, so that was helpful. How do you look at this effort of a team to take some time and energy and resources to reflect on itself, how we are doing things, how we are getting together, and how we are performing together? What's your view on this?
It's essential. The time what we spend together is really strengthening our team. And of course, it should be a value time. So it shouldn't be just we sit together because it's necessary. But some people say that we should really just be very effective, really very, very focused all the time, and I know what I have to do. My time is very, very precious, and don't waste my time. And then practically we're skipping that emotional part, and we're skipping that part that can go beyond the how to say the first level of interaction, knowing each other, having really links between us. And I believe that sometimes we really need to spend time, not just because it is a minimum requirement for the work, but even going beyond. And just an example for this. We have some breakfasts. So in our company, different teams, I also do my breakfast with different people. Not every day, but time to time, we're organizing breakfast just to come together. And these are really skip-level meetings, so it's not the same team all the time, but different people, just to have a coffee together and then talking about what is really important for us, which never is the target, the budget, and the ultimate goal of the bank, but things that are really affecting us on a daily basis.
And what do you think is the best outcome of that? What did you feel that either you or people that participated say, well, it was really useful because of?
Because people can energize each other.
Uh-huh.
Once, on the other side, people really need information, and sometimes, and even especially during COVID, people were recognizing that we don't know each other. I told you we hired almost 500 new colleagues, and who was joining us during the COVID. They, even if we talked to each other every second week or day or whatever, we never met. And it's really much harder to understand that what is your expectation in a cooperation through Zoom than having something together and understanding that who is Cosmin?
Yes, and who are you, and what do you really mean? Yeah. Indeed, this is very difficult to do in online. But building on everything you said about how your team and teams get better and better by knowing each other and spending structured time together, that will help them performing better together. How about the future? A lot of people say, let's not say everybody, but almost everybody says that 2023 will not be an easy year. It will be a difficult year for many domains, for many people. What do you think the teams should strengthen up to? What should teams build now in order to be able to successfully go through 2023?
I don't think that there is just a silver bullet that this. If you do this, then next year will be easy. And by the way, always we believe that the next year will be somehow, or we hope it will be easier, because this was really just before answering your question, in COVID. We said that it's really tough. We believe that it really limits us, and it's impossible to live. But now we have the war around us, and I'm not sure that it's easier and it's better, and hard to compare, of course. But there is a saying that think about twice what you wish for yourself, and so I think whatever we get, we have to take it. We have no other option, so let's do the best out of this. And I'm pretty sure if we did it with COVID, then we will do it with the current environment. And yes, probably next year it will be a tough year from a perspective of the economical environment. Even if the war hopefully will end somehow, but still the environment won't change from this perspective. Inflation is there. So, but coming back to your questions, I don't think that the good teams, or those teams who are really committed to work together, they had serious and significant problems during COVID. And even now they somehow coping with this. Here the biggest role, of course, is on the leader. That his role is the most important. On the other side, it's also the team's responsibility if they really want to achieve something together. And the more leadership, the higher in the leadership hierarchy, I think it's more dependent on the team itself.
Talking about next year, what would you say would be your main needs from your team? What would you need from your team?
Actually, you know that we went through an exercise, and we decided that we have a common goal.
Okay.
And this is what we have to work on, and this is what we have to really make through. And I don't know whether if it's the right forum to tell, because it's we should tell it to our colleagues in a room. But definitely, it's about the overall well-being of our colleagues. Mm-hmm. So we centered our next year's development around making the company this culture of to a place where it's really good to work.
So your need would be for them to work together to this common goal. This would be the most important aspect. Mm-hmm. Are there any learnings from the COVID period this year that you would want to see taken further in 2023? Look, it was we had some hard times. We learned some lessons. Now we are better. You are better than you were before as a bank and as a team. Are there some learnings that you would like to move forward in 2023?
I don't think it's very new, but also COVID and this situation is stressing or highlighting again and again the importance of communication. So many times we believe that people understand what I'm saying. They have the same way of thinking as I have, and it's not true. So the bigger is the organization, the more important is to talk to each other, and especially to regularly talking to people and having forums for an honest and direct information sharing.
So besides communication, which we understood how critical it is for the success of a leader with his team or his organization or her team or her organization, is there anything else that might be helpful?
Definitely. My other point is the patience. We are on a hurry, and we always trying to do our best within a really limited time frame, and we just forget about that. Actually, we have to listen to our colleagues, and we have to we forcing them somehow, and it's very, very how to say, trendy now to you can make mistakes. Okay, try it and do it. But then, if there is a mistake, we are not really patient to say that, okay, let's talk it through, let's have the conclusions, and then, agree that what's the next step. So instead of we just making the conclusion very, very fast.
That you are to blame?
Yeah. So it's, and it's not easy really, because the environment, the world around us, it doesn't help us to be calm and a bit meditative. Which is, I'm not saying that the role of a leader is just to being in an alpha mode or something like this. Of course not. But we need to be more patient,
more reflective,
to each other, and really to listen.
You touched, I think, a very important point, and now culturally, also with the patience, I think we're not in the best culture for allowing patience, but you also mentioned this relationship with mistakes. How does it fit for a team that wants to high perform? What should be a team's relationship with its mistakes?
If you not try, and if you have no tolerance to mistakes, then you would not really develop. On the other side, of course, there are limitations. So we have to find a balance. And if you are in a very dangerous type of business, your people need to understand that the small mistakes are even welcome. but the big mistakes should be avoided. And even people are making small mistakes. It's not natural that we have the tolerance to that. And sometimes you never know that it's a small mistake or a bigger mistake, and it will be a small, or the outcome. Sometimes it's surprisingly serious, and then still you have to have the feeling and the understanding to that, and the openness to foster an environment when mistake is not a negative thing, but it's a trial to be better.
I may build on that now that we are coming closer to the end of our podcast, in hoping that we communicated well enough, so people understood.
The bad news is that
we didn't know.
The communication cannot be. I mean, it could be sufficient enough.
Okay.
But in communication, there is no limit, really.
True, of misunderstanding.
Yes, really. So probably you also remember cases when you believed that it was quite easy to understand from the other party what you said, but still we are different, and that's one side. It's really nice and sometimes funny. Sometimes it's difficult to cope with this.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time and for your answers. We hope we communicated well enough, but if in case we didn't, or we could do something better, I'm very much welcoming your comments, your feedback, and your proposals for improving this podcast that we are running at Etymology Institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Vă mulțumim că ați ascultat podcastul Etymology Institute susținut de OTP Bank. Scopul nostru principal e diseminarea conceptelor validate științific și a bunelor practici din domeniul construirii și conducerii echipelor performante. Credem că e mare nevoie în România de profesionalizarea subiectului și sperăm să putem ajuta cu aceste conversații. Ele sunt izvorâte atât din experiența noastră directă de lucru în echipă, cât și din cea de lucru cu echipele clienților noștri.
Conținutul Mind Architect nu este destinat și nici nu trebuie interpretat ca fiind utilizabil pentru a diagnostica, trata, atenua, vindeca, preveni sau un alt mod a fi utilizat pentru orice boală sau condiție medicală. Nici nu trebuie considerat substitut pentru consultație psihologică sau muncă terapeutică.